And I am also going to share, just so you can see who some of our board members are. You know, there's about 12 of us now on the board that we're all committed to the conscious capitalism and driving programs in the New York City area. So conscious capitalism is a not-for-profit organization whose purpose is to build a movement of business leaders, really improving the practice and perception of capitalism. So we provide a framework to support business leaders while they elevate humanity through good, ethical, and noble practices. We all believe that capitalism works, period, and it has the power to positively change lives. That's unparalleled in what it can do. A lot of great things have come as a result of capitalism, like reducing poverty, child mortality, bringing literacy, education, art, and culture to people around the planet, and ultimately extending our life expectancy by years and years. However, on the flip side, we all know that we have a lot of work to do still. We've allowed greed to creep in, monopolies have taken over, and companies have been pressured to put shareholders first. We all have our own personal reason why we're here, but fundamentally, I think we all believe there needs to be a conscience to balance capitalism, right? We all have a role to play to help improve things. So there's 4 tenets of conscious capitalism. It was created by the Whole Foods founder, John Mackey, and Ron Sisodio, a university professor, and they wrote the book on conscious capitalism. You know, it's based on having a higher purpose, stakeholder orientation, conscious culture, and conscious leadership. Here in New York City, we are committed to building a thriving, sustainable community of individuals that are going to drive business as a force of good for New York City and the metropolitan area. It's not just New York City. We really look at the train lines of where all the folks can commute into the city from. That's the area we look at, and we look at through education, advocacy, and community building. So our vision is really to connect, inspire, and activate a conscious capitalist in the community with events like this. And as we move forward, we're going to get back into the face-to-face activities as well and really build those relationships and network. So if you think about some of the things conscious capitalists think about, it's around DE&I, right? It's about education, global poverty, human rights, standards of living, and local communities throughout. So I'm going to actually stop sharing now, if I can stop sharing there. Great. So our guests that we have with us today are passionate about these items just as I am. So personally, I've been on a journey, and I call it to eradicate poor management, right? So that we can create work environments that provide purpose, growth, inclusion, and security for all people. As a previous chief people officer and now CEO, my core values have always been people matter. And I go back to what my father taught me years ago, and it was around treat everyone with dignity and respect, as well as never judge someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes. And I always appreciate when I'm talking to other leaders that have the same values and the same passion. And when you look at what's going on today with the Great Resignation and people really reevaluating what they're looking for in the day-to-day, because we realize that we have our values, we realize that family matters, we want to, we went through a really tough time during the pandemic. And so people are rethinking what's going on. And that's why we call this session the reevaluation, because the Great Resignation sounds so negative and daunting. But if you look at it on the flip side, people are looking for a positive outcome. People are reevaluating their values, their priorities. People want to help others, right, succeed. With opportunities out there, it's helping others find their way to those opportunities, right? And people want empathy, flexibility, purpose, opportunities, and respect. So it means all companies need to elevate their game. And we have to consider more than just the shareholders and focus on all of the stakeholders in the industry. And the most important people most important asset of any company is the people. That is absolutely what helps drive organizations forward. And thus, that's why I'm so excited with our two guests today. We have the CEO from Greystone Bakery, Joan Kenna, and we have Senior Director of Marketing from Power to Fly, Lauren Haggerty. These businesses are also built on the core tenets of conscious capitalism, right? They're committed to driving economic equality by upskilling and connecting underrepresented talent with businesses that are committed to thrive. So I know you've probably heard me talk enough now, so I want to dig in and let each of our speakers tell us more about their organization. Afterwards, we'll moderate a Q&A session. So please feel free to put your questions at any point in the chat window. We'll take a look as we go along. If it's appropriate, we'll ask them right away. Otherwise, we'll save them for the end for the Q&A. So first, let me introduce to you Joe Kenner. Joe has been the Greystone president and CEO since April 2020. If you haven't heard of Greystone, they make amazing brownies, which you might find in Ben & Jerry's ice cream. I believe you told me it was Whole Foods as well. Amanda, who helps us on the marketing, explained that during COVID, she got very addicted to the brownies. So Joe, the other thing, I'm not sure you realize, I went to Pace as well, so you're a fellow alumni. He's joined Greystone executive team in 2018 as the Vice President of Programs and Partnerships, responsible for directing Greystone workforce development and community wellness strategies and activities. And since then, Greystone has delivered millions of dollars in economic impact through job placements and expanded employer and service provider relationships. He serves on the board of directors of Conscious Capitalism, Inc., the Mid-Hudson Regional Economic Development Council, the New York City Workforce Investment Board, the B Team, and is an advisory council member of the REDF Impact Investing Fund. I believe it was from the B Corp, you were just rated #1 of B Corp employee, Joe, as well?
Top 5% in the world.
Fantastic, for 9 years in a row.
Oh, wow. That's right.
Once I offered him a little bit of empathy.
He's also been featured in a variety of local and national media, including Bloomberg, CNBC, Yahoo Finance, Forbes, USA Today, The Wall Street Journal, Quartz, and the Journal. So Joe, I've heard the story. It's more than a brownie, it's more than a job. And that your bakers join us through an open hiring policy, which means no interviews, no background checks, and no resumes are required. Why don't you tell us more?
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you, Kathy, and the Conscious Capitalism New York City team for this opportunity. And if we could just have everybody that's not a speaker mute, I'd appreciate it, just so we don't get the feedback in the background. That would be great. I don't know if you could do that, Kathy or Amanda, but yeah. That would be great. Really appreciate the opportunity. So let me just share my screen here with you all, and we'll get started. What I wanted to do, really, to your point, to your question, Kathy, is one, just explain Greyston, because not a lot of people know the history of Greyston, the story of Greyston, and all that we do. So I want to just take you briefly through that. But what I really want to do, particularly with this group, is try and push and expand our thinking about how we think about hiring, and particularly the future of work. So I'm going to try to do all of that in 10 to 15 minutes. So looking forward to having this conversation. And I do invite questions. I think we can put questions in the chat. So Kathy and team, just keep me honest and make sure we get to those questions. But let me just start with who we are here. And Greyston, we are celebrating our 40th year in business. We're going to actually be having a 40th anniversary gala celebration in October 6th to be exact. And there's more information on our website if you go there, but we're celebrating 40 years of business. And Greyston's is a unique company in the sense that we were actually founded on an idea more so than a product. And the idea of our founder, and that's our founder right here, Bernie Glassman. Interesting guy. He's like a cornucopia Renaissance man. Just was a Jewish guy from Brooklyn who studied aeronautical engineering, became a Zen Buddhist monk, and then a social entrepreneur and founding Greyston. But Bernie believed in this idea and really asking the question is, how can we create thriving communities? And you see him in this group of Zen Buddhists pictured here in front of the Greyston Mansion in the Riverdale section of the Bronx. This is where they were baking cakes and other pastries to support themselves. But they found during this time in the 80s that there were a lot of folks who were homeless, a lot of folks who were basically excluded from society for many reasons, whether they were formerly incarcerated, they were dealing with drugs. If you recall, at this time, AIDS was at its height. So a lot of folks were excluded from the economy, they were excluded from jobs, they were excluded from housing. And Bernie just saw that as particularly the fact that many of those folks wanted to work, were available to work, but were excluded. He saw that as an injustice. And so he would literally pull people off the streets that wanted to work and just ask them the question, do you want to learn a skill? Do you want an opportunity to do something different with your life? Come bake with us and we'll teach you how it's done. That's really the genesis of open hiring. That's the genesis of what Greyston is all about. And I tell that story because you'll see this kind of flow through the presentation, even in our history at Greyston in terms of all the things that we're about and what we're a part of in this particular community. So for those who don't know, we are in the southwest section of Yonkers, New York. We're about 2 miles north of the Bronx border. Yonkers, I would say it is a city in transition for the better. A lot of development is happening here, but particularly in the section where we're located, there are some challenges from a poverty standpoint, from stable housing, returning citizens, high school graduates. There's a lot of challenges that the Yonkers is still facing, and particularly where we're located. And it's been our mission, it's been our vision since our founding to impact that in some way, and we believe we can do that with one job. So as has been mentioned, if you don't know Greyston, I like to say anytime you've had a chocolate fudge brownie or a Ben & Jerry's half-baked or mint chocolate chance to Justice Remix, Changes Brewing, we're in those pints of ice cream. We're the brownie inclusions that you find in those ice creams. And also, if you happen to walk through the aisles of Whole Foods, you'll see our packaged brownies there, both the vegan flavors as well as the regular flavors. And just this past April, we've introduced a new ice cream with Whole Foods, their private label brand 365. It's a Birthday Blondie almond milk ice cream. It's really delicious. We are the birthday cake vegan blondie in that. And I say all that not to brag about our products, because they are delicious products and I do want you to purchase them, but it's not so much the products that are the story, it's actually the people. And the people that we hire, particularly our bakery apprentices, as we call them, the entry-level positions, as you'll see Maria here, one of our bakers, they're brought through a hiring process called open hiring. And open hiring, very simple, yet at the same time rather profound. All it means is you put your name on a list. Traditionally, you had to come to our bakery at 104 Alexander Street in Yonkers and physically put your name on a list. We've now moved into the tech age. You can just go to greyston.org/open hiring, and you can actually add your name to the list there. And as we call in people, we call in maybe 10 or so at a time. If you got the call, you got the job. No background checks, no interviews, no resumes. We call you in for an orientation, and that walks you through the process of what it means to work at Greyston, what it means to be a bakery apprentice. And you begin a 6-month or so apprenticeship where we teach you the tricks of the trade and teach you what it means to be a baker at Greyston Bakery. And that's our process. And it's one of those things where, and as we talk about the great reevaluation, I like to say the great reassessment, because I think a lot of employees are now reassessing, where they're working, even why they're working in some cases. I think it's time for us as business leaders and employers in particular to do our own reevaluation, our own reassessment. So I want to just take you through some things about open hiring. And one, the people that we hire and really the people that we're targeting with open hiring. I talk a lot about barriers, but just so folks understand, it's a broad term. It can mean the formerly incarcerated, it can mean those who lack education, work experience, those who are challenged with substance abuse, age, language, almost a third of our employee base are Spanish speaking now, reflecting really the population in Yonkers. Gender can be a barrier in some cases, disconnected youth. It's a broad term, but these are the folks that I like to say are the ones that have dropped out of the labor force, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But, particularly why now? Why are we talking about this, and why I think it's actually a prime opportunity? And I love your question, Kathy, about the progress. And I do believe progress is being made, but I think we still have a long ways to go because folks are talking about it, and you can see the timeline here. Beginning with the Business Roundtable and the change from shareholder primacy to stakeholder capitalism. We're seeing it with COVID and the social unrest in 2020. That was the time I became CEO, actually. Fun time to be a first-time CEO. But you're seeing the change happening and folks talking about whether it's Jamie Dimon of the JP Morgan Chase, Ajay Bago, who used to be at MasterCard. You're seeing a lot of CEOs talking about how they're rethinking their hiring practices, how they're focusing on different populations to look at, maybe this is a place where there's some untapped talent that we might want to tap into. There's changes happening, but again, I don't think it's happening fast enough. And just to give you a visual of why I feel that way, when you think about the fact that we have 11.5 unfilled jobs, I think it's now gone down to 11.3. But at the end of the day, we still have about 6 million officially unemployed. And by the way, that 11.5 was a record. You have about 4.5 million quitting. But what really gets to me is the fact that we have about 10 million, and research has shown this, 10 million that are not in the labor force because they have one or more barriers. So these are the folks that have just been told no repeatedly in terms of seeking a job, going back to those folks with barriers, the disconnected youth, the formerly incarcerated. That is an untapped group for us. Do I think that every person in that group is going to work? No. But the idea is we've got all of these folks on the sidelines now, and again, going through this reevaluation, this reassessment. And if you look at some research that Harvard and Accenture did, I think it was last year or the year before, they're saying about 27 million of folks of untapped talent are on the sidelines, particularly when you start to look at folks like ourselves who may have been out of the labor force for a few years, but due to AI and the techniques that some companies use when they look for candidates, some folks get excluded because they might have a gap in their resume or they're not using the right terms for the different programs that these companies use to reevaluate resumes. What we believe is that as we start to connect open hiring to some of these excluded groups, you can tap into a workforce that is loyal, that's ready to work, they want to learn. You can bring folks off the sidelines, whether it's the 6 million that are officially unemployed, the 4.5 that are quitting, or the ones that have just left the labor force altogether. And it's a large group of folks. We believe that open hiring is the answer to that. But more importantly, if you think about open hiring, that's just removing the barrier to entry. What you really have to think about is what happens at the next stage. How do we keep folks in? Whether through learning and development, providing career pathways, and I know my director of HR is on here, so I'm going to make sure I talk about that. But we want to make sure that folks are promoted at our companies. Do they feel that they can be promoted at our companies? Are they safe? That's really inclusive employment. So it's a holistic approach to looking at hiring. So it's not just bringing people in, but how do we keep them in and how do we make sure that they're thriving in their jobs? And I love this quote from Suzanne Clark. She's the president and CEO of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. She gave a kind of a State of the Union address in regards to American business earlier this year. And she talked about how we cannot continue this kind of musical, game of musical chairs with our employees where folks just kind of hop from company to company. That is not how we're going to grow this economy. We need people. And we're seeing that with the 11.5 or 11.3 million folks, unfilled positions that are out there. We need to bring folks in. And she even said, we have to look at innovative solutions, effective solutions that can bring those folks off the sidelines. And again, GREYSTON firmly believes that open hiring is the way to do that. That's how you're going to grow, not just this labor force, but grow the economy. And if you look at just traditionally how we've been doing things, and as you've seen with the the other visual, we don't do a good job of hiring. If we did, we would not have 11 and a half unfilled jobs. So there are ways that we can rethink things. I mean, if we look at, the millions unemployed, the lack of awareness and access to supportive services, those are some of the reasons why folks are leaving the labor force. And I think a lot of folks are just being unnecessarily excluded because we have our own biases, we have our own filters that we've always been using because that's what we've always been using. And we really have to really stop and take a breather and just reevaluate. Do we need these requirements for some of these entry-level jobs, particularly where you can learn the job on the job? The only requirement should be, do you want to work? Will you show up? Are you willing to learn? If that's all that's required of that particular job, we say open hiring is the answer. So this is just a visual of what we do at GREYSTON. As I said, if you look from the left to the right, we remove the barrier to entry. But then the next step is the onboarding. It's the training. We do hold folks accountable. So I tell folks all the time, it's an opportunity, not a promise. Once you've come into this organization, you are required to work. You are required to do well. You are required to take instruction and show up and be present. Because again, we are providing quality products to folks like a Ben & Jerry's Unilever, a Whole Foods, a Cava, Van Leeuwen, Jenny's Ice Cream. All of these folks are marquee companies that have high standards of quality and service, and we've got to make sure we can meet the needs of our customers. So we require the same excellence of our employees as well. And if to the extent you cannot meet that, then certainly we'll have to part ways. However, before we get there, we want to make sure that we at least provide our employees with the support that they need. Because again, a lot of our folks are coming from situations that can be very challenging. We want to make sure that we have support and really the evolution of HR, having a social worker on our staff, having career pathways where folks can move up within our organization or move out, I should say. GREYSTON Bakery is a for-profit entity. It's the first benefit corporation in New York State, but we're owned by a nonprofit, GREYSTON Foundation, that provides workforce development training, job development support, and case management support to all of our employees as well as the residents of Southwest Yonkers. So we want to make sure that we at least get the support for you. If you find that being a baker is not for you, there are other opportunities for you to get trained in other emerging fields, and we'll place you in jobs with some of our employment partners. So we provide this model, as we say, this is inclusive employment, and really DEI in its purest form, because there is no judgment. So one of the things that we've been doing, particularly over these last 2 years that I've been CEO, is when you think about the millions of unfilled jobs, the millions on the sidelines, GREYSTON is a small company. We employ about 120 folks at our bakery, 80 of whom are the open hires. Clearly, we can't make a dent on our own and those folks that are on the sidelines. So what we really need is for other companies to be doing what we're doing. And very proud to say in some of these names you might recognize, whether it's Kraft Heinz or Bonduelle, which is a French frozen food company, and The Body Shop that many folks might know. We need more folks like these companies to be doing open hiring. And very proud to say, The Body Shop's piloted open hiring back in 2019 in their distribution center in Raleigh, North Carolina. It was such a success because they saw a cut in their turnover rate, about 2/3. They saw productivity go up 13%, and they also saw the time to hire go down from about 30 days to 5 to 7. And when you think about that, particularly as business leaders, that's time and money. That's an ROI that's pretty meaningful for any business leader to see. And it's because, again, you're getting good quality folks who are they're going to be so loyal to you because when everyone else said no, you said yes. They're going to return that favor by giving you their best. And that's what Body Shop has seen. And for the last 3 years, those numbers have pretty much held. Their productivity, their time to hire, that's pretty much held. And because of that, they expanded open hiring in 2020, they moved it to the retail operations in the US and Canada. As they continued to see success, they moved it to all of their retail operations in the US, Canada, Australia, and the UK. So now there are about over 3,000 positions that the Body Shop is now providing through open hiring, really across the globe, because I know they're looking at other places, and possibly Nutora, the parent company of The Body Shop, will be looking at them as looking at open hiring as well. So we really need bold and courageous leaders like The Body Shop and others to really replicate the open hiring model. This is one area where we don't want to be unique, because again, the pool is so large of the folks looking for work that want to work, and if we could have bold and courageous leaders stepping up to the plate to do that, we will be very excited about that. And that's also the reason why we'll be honoring The Body Shop at our October 6th gala this year for the work that they've done and for the success that they've had with open hiring. So it's quite an exciting time. So I'm going to stop there and just say that now that you've heard the pitch, now that you've heard the speech, we like to say buy, donate, or replicate. So if you just go to our website, there are opportunities for you to buy our brownies. You can buy them online. I know Amanda's probably jumping at the chance to do that because she is an addicted person, so I love it. Or you can donate to our foundation to support our workforce development and replication efforts. And if you are a business leader or know businesses that might be amenable to this, we'd love to have a conversation with you. It's part of our mission to help businesses do what we're doing. So we'd love to spend some time with you and figure out how we can make this work. So I will stop there, and I don't know if you want to do questions now or if you want to wait till later, but more than happy to take something. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, I think I'll wait on the questions, but I mean, a couple of points that there, as Robert said, every understaffed business, right, restaurant needs to be looking at these opportunities, because it truly is a massive problem of finding people to come in. And, there's a lot of people out there that are open for opportunities, right? So I love that slide where you're saying you have all these open positions, all these people that are available. How do you bring it together? How do you bridge that gap? That is absolutely something critical. And I'll ask the questions in a little bit, but I want to bring Lauren into the conversation as well, because you have a situation where not everyone is at an entry level as well, right? So you're trying to match people that have some of the skills and are at different points in their career also. So businesses need to look and solve multiple options. But I will tell you, and I know, Joe, you and I have talked about this, if we start to create this network, right? You have the opening hire into certain areas, they're getting trained around customer service, and then we can look to reskilling and bring them into the next levels. And it may not be within that organization, right? If we can create the community, then it can expand from there.
Yeah, and that's really the idea behind the work that we're doing at our foundation, is what we're calling hubs, where we're doing the training, we're doing the job development services, we're doing the replication work and creating all of these employment partners. Like you said, maybe you do 2 or 3 years at GREYSTON and you realize, you know what, I don't want to work at this job anymore. We've got a ton of partners, and you got the seal of approval from us to work somewhere else. We'd be more than happy to pave that way for you. At the end of the day, for us, it's about opening up the opportunities, because as each person gets promoted or moves on, that opens up the opportunity for someone else to be an open hire.
Perfect. So we're going to come back. So if you have questions for Joe, please put them in the chat. But let me just change a little bit and introduce to you Lauren Haggerty. Lauren is the Senior Director of Marketing and Community for Power to Fly. It's a diversity recruiting platform for fast-tracking economic equity by upskilling and connecting underrepresented talent to roles in highly visible sectors. Lauren launched Power to Fly's virtual chat and learn program in 2018 and has hosted over 400 conversations with thought leaders worldwide. Formerly, Lauren worked as a community engagement manager for the industry-leading home automation platform Wink, where she recreated and revitalized the company's voice and persona. At her core, Lauren is a community builder who is passionate about forging bonds between humans and brands making a difference. I personally have been working with Power to Fly over the past few years. First, I leveraged their platform when I was a chief people officer, committed to attracting diverse talent in a very male-dominated industry. I was in the software industry. I've presented at a number of their events, the last one being the Diversity Reboot. And then lastly, I've been acting as a mentor for aspiring young ladies as well. So I've had a lot of interaction. It's been a great experience. But let me really let Lauren share more about the company.
Thank you. And I just want to say, Joe, I'm totally stealing that graphic of the ocean and people jumping off the boat, because I think that's precisely what we're doing too. It's how do we get the people that have just jumped off the boat and swimming to shore, or thinking about jumping off the boat and looking for their next move. That was just like a very, I don't know, conjoining moment for me seeing that. So thanks for sharing. I'm going to share my screen now. All right. Cool. So, hi, everyone. As Kathy said, my name is Lauren. I'm so excited to be here with all of you to tell you a little bit more about Power to Fly and the diverse communities that we serve. I think it's super interesting, our business model, because we actually are a true B2B and B2C business, in that we, make our money and our revenue through clients who come to us looking for a DEIB. And I'll say we consider DEI diversity, equity, inclusion, and actually belonging, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But they come to us looking for a solution, and essentially, many of the times it's filling roles for these underrepresented groups. And in order to do that, we need to have this really vast and diverse community. So I have the privilege of working on both sides of the business, recruiting and getting as many diverse individuals looking for jobs and upskilling opportunities, as well as the companies that are looking to hire them. It's a really challenging opportunity, but a challenge I'm more than willing to accept. Kathy gave a really great introduction of me, but I'm from a little town in upstate New York. We'll talk a little bit about why I live here in a moment, but I'm super passionate about community building. And I truly believe that building communities is at the core of all of our businesses. And if we pause and listen and understand what our communities want, then we can be successful regardless of what our end goals, our KPIs, our mission is. So I think that everything that I'm going to dive into today really resorts back to the community and understanding what your community wants and needs from you, and then really fitting those goals into your actions. So just again, to talk a little bit about Power to Fly. So we were founded in 2014 by Milena Berry and Catherine Zaleski to, as Kathy said, fast track economic equality by upskilling and connecting underrepresented talent to roles in highly visible sectors. We achieve that mission daily through connecting diverse talent to free live virtual events with decision makers like Kathy, to companies, hiring managers, and for all different stages of their career journey. So whether they're looking to change careers or they're happy in their current role, we also feature upskilling content and host summits with industry leaders who are in fact creating that diverse, inclusive, and equitable workforce. So I think the important thing to point out, and Joe talked about this a little bit too, is, what do I mean when I say underrepresented talent? Well, at Power to Fly, we are intersectional and focused on empowering women, non-binary, and trans individuals of all races, ages, ethnicities, sexual orientation, ability, veteran status, gender identity, you name it. We welcome everyone, including allies, to apply to roles, attend events, and of course, participate on Power to Fly as a client. Through that vast network of partners, our internal database and third-party resources, our community spans over 16 million professionals looking to further their careers through finding a new opportunity, upscaling, or, like I said, taking that current career to the next level. So at Power to Fly, we don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk. We didn't just go remote in 2020 when the pandemic hit, but we were founded on being a totally globally remote first team since 2014. Not only are we remote, but almost 70% of our team is based outside of North America, which is truly amazing. Aside from our location statistics, 85% of our team is women. 73% identify as BIPOC, 36% are parents, and over 19% are LGBTQIA+. The list goes on. We truly don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk at Power to Fly. But why is that DEIB work important? Well, diverse teams make better decisions 87% of the time. Inclusive companies are 1.7 times more likely to be innovative, and they have 2.3 times more cash flow per employee. And a high belonging, again, the B in DEIB, is linked to a whopping 56% increase in job performance. This switch from DEI to DEIB is actually pretty new for us, but as we've talked with clients and been immersed in this work for many years now, it's been proven that that belonging piece is almost as important as the first three letters DEI. So we've been focusing a lot more on that in the last year or so. I think another really important piece that we like to talk about at Power to Fly are the challenges that businesses face when they come to us. And we'll talk more about like how we do this in a bit. But, it starts with, raising awareness about benefits at the company. Do people know, what you offer and why you offer it and why it's important, to creating content that resonates with a target audience? A lot of companies have a really hard time, sharing their employees' stories and, why they chose to work at XYZ company, which is really important for hiring and recruiting diverse talent. Difficulty finding that diverse talent. So as Kathy said, the mid to senior candidates, you can't just post and pray and expect these candidates to show up and just apply to your roles on a recruiting platform. These people are highly over messaged by recruiters everywhere. You have to attract them in a much more unique and specific way, or else they just feel like they're just another tick in a box. Also, lack of clarity of DEIB in the organization. And I'll get to some more statistics that we've gathered from some of our clients in a bit, but diverse talent want in organizations that care about DEIB. And if you can't show them why this is important to your organization, then they're not going to waste their time applying. And then, of course, implementing and practicing policies that foster equity and inclusion. It's not just about getting diverse talent in the door, but it's retaining them. It's giving them opportunities to grow and really showing them why they belong, and you value them, their opinions, their creativity as they grow throughout the organization. So I mentioned at the very, very beginning that Power to Fly is a 360-degree diversity platform, but it's really here to support our clients, our employers at every stage of that talent engagement journey: attraction, acquisition, retention. DEIB employer branding, recruiting, retention, and training is highly fragmented across a variety of vendors and is managed by imperfect humans. Power to Fly eliminates that complexity and is differentiated in that we provide that end-to-end solution on one platform, allowing you to take a holistic, comprehensive, and cohesive approach to your DEIB strategy and implementation. Basically, logging in as a talent and user is very similar on Power to Fly, and you have the same access to all of the resources. Our company pages are the foundation of Power to Fly, because it's where we highlight not only our recruiter and hiring manager stories and journeys, but those talent that have applied and participated in events, their stories as well. People from underrepresented groups want to see people like themselves thriving, and they want to know that they are set up for success in these roles. So content like blog posts, meet the hiring manager videos, hiring events that they can attend in very small groups to meet the team that they'd be working with in the future are key to not only attracting these diverse talent, but showing them why they belong at these huge organizations. Okay. So moving along here, we work with over 200 companies globally. And you can see some of the logos here, everything from Fortune 500 companies like Microsoft, American Express, Dell, Meta, Nike, to fast-growing startups like Bumble, Chubbies. even mid-sized companies like Okta, Elastic, ServiceNow, and Slack, who are both unicorn companies. Through our vast network of partners, internal database, third-party resources, we have access to over, like I said, 165 million candidates to help these companies diversify and grow their underrepresented workforce. This slide, I just wanted to highlight here because, like I said, it's not just about the employers that are working for us, but it's also about the diverse talent that's coming in and getting roles. You can see on this slide, we've got senior experience designers, cyber risk intelligent analysts, data science and machine learning engineers. I mean, you name it. These aren't your run-of-the-mill software engineers. These are highly skilled professionals with 5, 6, 7, 8 to 15 years experience. And of course, we cover entry level and executive and beyond, but this is really our sweet spot because we found this is where companies struggle the most when it comes to hiring underrepresented talent. I also want to quickly just share some of like our company benefits, which really showcases that these events and the content that our community and employers are participating in aren't just fluffy content with no action. People are appreciating hearing one-on-one from hiring managers and getting that inside look. And as I like to say, trying before they apply, because we don't get to do that nowadays, especially as more and more of the recruiting and companies are going remote. It's an advantage in many ways and also sometimes a disadvantage. So we like to say that at Power to Fly, we're giving underrepresented talent that inside look that they wouldn't get elsewhere from people that have like-minded job seeking strategies as they do. And last but not least, I just want to showcase a few more just statistics around the impact of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We focus a lot on the economic impact that it will have if we can come close to reaching gender parity. And that's $2 trillion in today's market. An extra $2 billion in potential revenue if financial inclusion efforts brought in services for Black Americans. 19% more diverse management teams have higher revenues. I mean, you name it. I don't need to read all these statistics, but the numbers are there. It's a matter of, are companies ready to dive in and approach diversity, equity, and inclusion and this inclusive hiring from a 360-degree approach? Because it's not just about attracting the talent, it's about retaining them and giving them the opportunity to upskill and move and advance their career within your organization. Or as we've heard many times today, people will leave. And that's okay, because there is a company out there that will value them, train them, pay them, and make sure that they are well cared for and appreciated within an organization. So I will pause. I think I'm almost at 15 minutes, but thank you. I hope that was helpful for many of you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lauren. I appreciate it. And, it's interesting, as a chief people officer, I needed to attract a diverse talent pool. And I had a number of recruiters at the time, and they were all like, I'm just going to keep going to my well, what I know well. And I'm like, no, you need to bring me a diverse slate. And they're like, well, that's impossible. And I'm like, no, it's not impossible. You need to think differently. Right. And that's how I first got introduced to Power to Fly. But it's interesting, as I'm working with more and more companies now, we have to think more innovative on how to attract new talent. And we as businesses need to be willing to invest more. And that's when I met then Joe, right, talking about the open hire, because it is across the entire employee journey, right? Because people are coming in with the barriers of getting into the roles. They don't have the skills, right? Many jobs now are requiring the skills. So it's something that is extremely powerful, what you're both offering, and slightly different points in the journey, right, of the employees. And that's why, knowing both of you, I was like, okay, this is going to be an interesting conversation to bring you both into it. Let me first start, though, as a company itself, and both of you are with companies that were built on purpose, right, of why you joined, and that there was a problem out there that we needed to solve. How much do you think having that purpose-driven mindset helps attract people to come work for your businesses?
I mean, I can take that. I mean, it's who we are. To be a part of conscious capitalism and these groups, all of that is who we are. Conscious leadership, focusing on profit and purpose together, not one to the exclusion of the other. That's from the very beginning, from our founder till now. It's who we are, and I have our HR director on with us now, and we've been interviewing folks, and a lot of the folks that we've been talking to, it's one of the first things they talk about is the mission, the core values, non-judgment, respect, compassion, empowerment, transformation. These are all things that attract folks. And even if you look at particularly what's going to be the largest employee cohort out there, which is the millennials, that's what they're looking for as well. They're looking for, yes, they want to contribute their technical capabilities, but they also want to be a part of something larger than whatever it is, whether they're an accountant, whether they're in manufacturing, whether they're in HR. They want to be a part of something more than that. So is what I'm doing solving one or more social ills out there? That's what folks want in their jobs, and more. So for us, it's not and even we in HR, we were talking about this, is, it's kind of organic for us, not so much intentional, if that even makes sense, but it's just who we are. But we are looking at ways of how we can be more intentional about that, because I do think more and more people are looking for that in their jobs, and they're looking for, I mean, especially if you're spending 8 hours a day someplace, yes, you want the paycheck because we're not stupid, but we also want to spend our time in a way that's, adding to society as opposed to taking from it.
Agreed.
I'll add on to that. I mean, we are super intentional about hiring around our mission and values. I think just to start, when you work in the DEIB space, especially thinking about like the last 3 years, it's really hard to come to work and, as you just said, spend 8 hours a day immersed in this all day long, trying to fight for the greater good. And then you go home and you turn on the TV or you open a newspaper and the world is falling apart. You literally don't get to shut this off, because every single second of every single day you are fighting for people who don't have the same privileges that you have. And, for us, we bake this into our process, not as, we actually don't call it a culture interview or a culture fit. We have a values panel, and you are actually ranked on how well you align to or not ranked, scored based on how well you align to each of our values, and how important those are to you. Because growing as an owner, being a transparent optimist, all of these things are so core to who we are. And if you're not immersed in this mission and along the journey with us, there's just no way that you can come and bring your full self to Power to Fly every day. It's just that important.
Yep. Agreed. And I mean, it is that people are they want purpose, right? And we get, obviously, as part of our conscious capitalism community, it is people seeking that, right? So businesses that are more conscious are attracting more people that want to continue to do good. And the idea is this continues to build a community and more opportunities, et cetera. So great, thanks. So we've got a question from Wissam. This one's for Joe. How do you think your hiring policies affect the ultimate quality of your product?
Well, that's a very good question. Who asked that question?
Wissam.
No, thanks for the question. I would say it's not so much the quality of the product, because the process is taught, and it's taught by people that are very skilled and have the expertise in whatever it's supply chain, whether it's R&D and quality, or just overall operations. The process is taught. What I think impacts the product is, again, going back to how we hire. So it's not just a brownie. We would say that on our package. It's more than a brownie. It's more than a job. I think that is what is really impacted when people see that, I'm not just, having a nice little calorie excursion here, but it's actually helping someone get work and helping someone get off the sidelines. That really changes the dynamic, and it has people have a mind shift really in terms of hiring, but also how they're using their dollars for something more than just buying a product, but they're actually contributing to the well-being. So the quality, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's impacting the quality all that much because that's something that's taught, but I do think it's impacting the buying decisions. And going back to the previous question, I think it's impacting the hiring decisions that people are making, where they choose to work and where they want to be. People want to work here because of that very reason. I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Yeah, no, absolutely, it does. I think on both ends, because you mentioned on the consumer end, and we talked about that, there's this element of doing good, and on the employment end, I do think definitely the loyalty that you're bringing with the job transpires into ultimately what's being produced. So
Absolutely.
it does on both ends. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, and if you think about the loyalty, what have you found? I think you both mentioned it in both your presentations, but how has it improved the loyalty of your employees by having these hiring and inclusive practices and belonging for employees? I was going to start with Lauren on that one first.
Yeah, I mean, when you kind of asked this question, I thought of a couple of things, but why people stay at Power to Fly, I think really boils down to two things. I think it starts with actually honoring a remote work policy. Not only, like I shared, is like over 60% of our team like globally remote or over, outside of North America, but we have a lot of digital nomads and people who live outside their home country. So it gives these people the freedom to go stay abroad with family for 6 months, a year, however long they want to stay, and then return home without having to worry about, do I need to check in on meetings? Do I need to like be at this on-site or, whatnot? So that flexibility and also just complete opportunity to travel and live that free lifestyle is something that's super attractive to the employees at Power to Fly. The second, I would say, and this might be a little bit of a cliche answer, but it ties into that as well. It's the unlimited PTO policy. And I know startups get a lot of flack for this. And I was just reading an article this morning, I forget where, but it was really running into the statistics of like how little PTO employees of tech companies especially take that unlimited PTO. But what I can say at Power to Fly is there's not a record keeping process. There really isn't there's a ask, and unless you're missing a project, like go for it. There's really no reason PTO would be denied under perhaps some very strange circumstances, but at least on my team, it's the one thing that people come back to me as a leader and say, I don't think you understand how much it's appreciated that if an emergency happens, there's no questions asked, I'm out for a day, 2, 3, or, this just popped up on my calendar. And there's a lot of autonomy that I think comes with, the remote flexibility. And then this, what you have to get done. And, we respect you. We're all adults here. You're going to get what you need to get done and move on. So perhaps that's a cliche answer, but I think those two things are just really important to the employees that work here. And we don't make it something that they feel guilty about. I spent the last summer in Europe solo traveling and nobody asked any questions. So it's super important to our culture to have that freedom.
Joe?
Yeah, I would look to some of the human stories behind the folks, not just at GREYSTON, but when you look at some of our replicating partners, whether it's the Body Shop or whether it's Kraft Heinz. I saw a stat the other day when I was sitting with one of our VPs, and they showed that it's like 20 to 30% of the folks that have gone through the open hiring, they were out of work for more than a year. I mean, can any of us, if we were out of work for more than a year, we could probably tap into our savings or investments or something, and that's how we support ourselves. But when you look at the folks that we hire, a lot of them, they can't do that. So when you think about the loyalty factor there, and I hear this theme all the time when I sit with our folks, whether it's the bakers, whether it's the people in maintenance, whatever, the theme that always comes through is GREYSTON is everything, because it was a game changer for their lives. I invite you guys, if you just Google GREYSTON Wide Open Dreams, I'll put the link in the chat. But it's a documentary 20-minute documentary that some film students from Westchester Community College did for us, and they highlighted 3 of our employees: a single mom, formerly incarcerated, English as a second language, and they all gave their story of how GREYSTON totally changed their life. I mean, the single mom, she was a single mom of 5 kids. At least one has special needs. She could not get a job to save her life and could not support her kids, to the point where she was about to give them up until she got the call. And she's now been with us for, I want to say, 4 years now, and was just recently promoted to supervisor. It's a game changer. When we say all the time, it's a family. We're looking out for each other. It's tough. This is not, and I don't want to sugarcoat, this is a tough job. It's not for everyone. It's 12 hours. You're lifting heavy bags of sugar and flour. It's a tough job, but for the people that stick it out and really turn it into something that's great and get promoted, this changes their lives in a major way. So when people see that, they see the change in lives, or they see the internal promotions, they see the opportunities to do other things. That's how you create the attraction and the attachment to the company.
Yeah, from my experience as well, I mean, when you empower people, they step up and you give them the opportunities, they're appreciative and they want to do more. So often we get so caught up in our day-to-day and we get into like a micromanagement task, just management, rather than allowing people to bring their full self and give. And when we empower people, we shouldn't be surprised, but often we are surprised, but they are appreciative and then loyal, and the results, it drives productivity up as well, right? So companies are benefiting on the bottom line as a result. We haven't even talked about, but if you have happy employees, your customers are happy, right? And then that is really what drives profit for a company eventually. And I know this isn't about profit, but if we all were to focus on our people first, that's how we would drive an amazing community. Excellent. So I got a question from Raji. Raji, do you want to ask it yourself or I can read it?
I can ask. Sorry, I was getting to the mute button. Oh, my camera's off. 1 second. Okay. So I have one for Lauren and one for Joe. Lauren, I know you were talking about some things about belonging, and we hear DEI a lot. We have a new, where I work at the Center for Reproductive Rights, we have a new chief diversity, equity, and inclusion officer, but I think belonging is something that we are constantly talking about, but it's not specifically called out. And I loved your idea of having that like blog to showcase the diverse pool, so you feel like, oh, there's someone else that is like me, and this is why they're there. Do you have other sort of small initiatives or steps that companies can take to actually foster this like sense of belonging? Because I think it is so critical in addition to the DEI.
Yeah, amazing question. And I'll say, like, the blogs, the employer advocacy is really great on that attraction front. But to take it a step further and focusing on the belonging, something that we do at Power to Fly and we help our clients with is actually hosting what we call listening circles. And, many times these come around, a certain event that's happened at a company, perhaps something a little controversial, or maybe it's something that's held at very poignant times throughout the year, around International Women's Day, sometime in Black History Month, around Pride Month, etc. But they're very small, like 5 to 6, no more than 10 people. We offer multiple different sessions, and then very specific sessions for people who identify as whatever the theme is and allies of said theme. And we have an external moderator come in, so there's no bias with the company, and we just talk. So to give a concrete example, we just had one around Roe v. Wade, or a few around Roe v. Wade. And we invited, anyone who was a woman or identifies as a woman could come and sit in a very particular circle and talk about how they felt about the decision and, how it was impacting our mental health at work, at home. A lot of people live in states that were impacted. And then the caveat to that is we had a separate listening circle for all of our allies. So we had a safe space in a small group setting internally for people to talk about this issue that's affecting them, and not only just affecting them as a human, but affecting them possibly at work as well. So by implementing this, we're not only fostering this sense of belonging, but we're really creating this sense of camaraderie across teams, across leadership levels, and giving people that safe space that they may not have. Some people may not even get the opportunity to talk about these at home. So it's something that's worked really well for us. And I highly encourage more companies taking advantage of the people in the room and the in-person or virtual spaces that are pretty easy to create now.
Thank you. I'm excited. We do like affinity groups, but that's different. You know, like this is very specific, and I like that.
Yeah.
And Joe, I know you spoke about like the Body Shop and a couple of their like big players, and I'm curious, like what are you doing, and how are you like sort of attracting and bringing in these companies into your fold of like, and showing the benefits, and like, and what can we do to like kind of help promote the benefits of open hiring? Because I definitely like, before you even said it, I knew it, but it wasn't something that like I can put to words, but you're living it. And I would love to like sort of get as many companies as possible who can do open hiring like into that sphere. So I'm curious as to like what are the avenues, and how do you attract and work with these companies who want to?
Awesome question, and I appreciate the willingness to help us out. So yeah, you're hired. Please support us. So a few things that I'm doing personally as, as president and CEO is, one, just being out there. So doing events like this, trying as much as I can to be on podcasts or get interviews. So every outlet is open. It's open to me. So whether it's TV, whether it's magazines, whether it's podcasts, I'm talking to the conscious capitalism groups, I will do it. As part of our 2030 strategy a year ago, we formed what we call the GREYSTON Employment Opportunity Center, and one of the planks is replication. So we have a whole team dedicated to working with the body shops of the world to do open hiring in some form, because it's going to look different in different contexts, so we understand that. The body shop asks an additional question like, why do you want to be in retail? Just to kind of get a sense for the person's ability to work, in a customer-facing business. So we get that. But at the end of the day, it's really about going back to those millions on the sidelines. And I saw another question I can't wait to answer. But it's getting to those millions on the sidelines that are looking for work. And how can we do that? You don't have to do it the same way GREYSTON does. You don't have to do it the same way the Body Shop does. Start small, start large, but start. And it could really be one job. I mean, if we get enough businesses just doing one job in open hiring, that's a huge impact. Our 2030 goal is to see 40,000 jobs being offered through open hiring, and we've calculated it's about a $3 billion impact for the economy. I still think that's a conservative number because it doesn't include any kind of multiplier effect. But as we continue to have success, and as we see our employers having success and our partners having success, we want to roll out those numbers. So we include them in our annual reports. We include them in any type of media postings that we have. I talk about our folks all the time to get the word out. But really, as I do these presentations, I always say at the end, you are now deputized to be an ambassador for us to talk about it, and just direct them to us, at greyston.org. We'd love, that is the whole purpose of the nonprofit, is to make sure that we can get open hiring and inclusive hiring spread, far and wide. We actually have a partner in the Netherlands as well called the Start Foundation, and solely focused on getting open hiring. They're doing pure open hiring, by the way, just like GREYSTON in the Netherlands. So there are probably just over 60 pilots going on over there now, about 300 opportunities being offered. So we just continue to roll it out and talk about success, and they're all having success, in large and small, but they're having success with open hiring and inclusive employment. So the more people that we can recruit and deputize, I think the more we can impact the future of work.
Joe, on a follow-up on that, what do you think are people's objection to the open hiring and why they struggle with the concept?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't talk about my background, but I came from corporate America and Wall Street, Pepsi, Chubb, Lehman Brothers. So if you had told me about open hiring when I was in any of those positions, I would have rolled my eyes, because when you think about, particularly for public companies, the hoops that you might have to go through to just even talk about this idea, it's new. It's a radically different way of hiring. I get that. But when you see it working, and when you really understand and kind of take a step back and have a mind shift and ask yourself, why about certain prerequisites that we have for certain positions, you're like, okay, at first I thought, like, why would you do this? And then it's like, why wouldn't you do this? It just makes perfect sense, particularly for the entry-level jobs. And I want to make that clear. It's like we do this for the entry-level positions where you learn the job on the job. Both my positions here at GREYSTON, I joke about it. It's the irony. Like, I went through probably 9 interviews to get to my job, but that's by design. Going back to your earlier question, you want to bring in folks that are aligned with the mission and vision. But it's a new way of looking at hiring. And for folks, there's fear, obviously. We have our biases about those people, whether it's the formerly incarcerated or whatever. People ask us about safety, and I tell them all the time, it's a manufacturing environment. All the issues that we have, any other manufacturer would have. It's not because of open hiring. It's the fact that it's manufacturing. It's the fact that, they're 12-hour shifts. We have attendance issues like any other manufacturer would have. It's not open hiring. That's just the nature of the business. But again, it's not an easy job either. But it's a new concept for folks. And I think getting beyond, this is what we've always done, even though what we've always done is not really working, and we're spending billions a year doing that. I would say reallocate those costs. And I don't like to use it as a cost saver, but a reallocation of costs as opposed to spending money to keep people out. How do we invest that money and keep them in through learning and development, through career pathing for our employees, and have that be the business strategy as opposed to a practice that is clearly not working. If it was working, you wouldn't have 11.5 unfilled jobs and people on the sidelines at the same time. Something is not right. So there needs to be a change in the playbook here.
Yep. Agreed. No, and it's interesting. So for me, this is where I see with the open hiring is really at that entry level, getting people into the workplace again, bridging that gap, and then continuing to upskill, and connect with more senior positions. That's where I see the two of, the power to fly providing them the diverse opportunities. So that was my way of thinking of bringing some of this together. So I think, which was the question you were chomping at the bit on, Joe, does some of this new technology, is that the one?
Yeah, I love that one.
All right.
I
So
don't know who asked that question.
It was Joe.
Okay.
Other Joe.
Okay. No, I love that question, Joe, and that was one of the research pieces that I was referring to. I believe it was Harvard and Accenture. It's called Hidden Workers, Untapped Talent, I believe, and they talked about this very issue of AI and these algorithms that are used to kind of screen people out. And this, again, it highlights the failures in our hiring system. We're very good at hiring people that interview well, and we're very good at creating algorithms that hire the people that we tell the algorithm to hire. But when you're doing that, you're excluding folks who are actually good workers and probably better workers than the folks that are getting through the traditional interview process or whoever the algorithm told you to hire. They might be efficient in your mind, but I still question how well they work. And this study showed that there's probably 27 million folks that are being impacted by one of these methods, AI being one, and the others being just the traditional way of looking at it. But clearly we're missing folks. And I have people here that have gaps in their resume, and if they had submitted and they're with the great schools, they're great workers, but they would have been excluded because they have a gap, not necessarily because they're a bad worker or they don't have the skills. We're missing out when we develop these things. So I truly believe that, and you've seen it, 2 of my 5 supervisors at the bakery were former bakers. And one of them was the person I just mentioned who could not find a job to save her life because she didn't have the right experience. She didn't have the right, we'll teach you that. So again, it's our policies and our practices are not working, and they're not effective. So it makes sense to at least try something new. Whether you want to do it for the long term, I think once you see the results, you'll have a change of mind and a nice paradigm shift. But until then, at least try something.
And I think, Kathy, this goes very much in line with what you were saying earlier about your experience with Power to Fly. And I know from talking to like recruiting managers, hiring managers, and then like heads of talent and CEOs, like recruiters are scared to work with people like Power to Fly because, you know, they don't want to lose their job. They don't want to get replaced by another, you know, company or consultant or whatnot. But in reality, it's not, we're not replacing you. We're making you look better to your boss because we don't have the same bias that you have. So all of those candidates that you're overlooking or you can't find, we're finding and delivering to you. So yes, is, you know, AI screening like that, it is absolutely biased. And that's why you work with outside sources. And there's lots of us out there, which is kind of what we are trying to be, that all encompassing DEIB solutions platform, because that doesn't exist out there. And, you know, what we are specifically like on a mission right now to solve is a lot of that filtering ourselves. Like, can we truly find and create that one size fits all, like diversity recruitment filtering that helps sourcers, you know, really eliminate the bias. So we are not seeing gaps. So we don't have gender biases. I mean, let's not even mention that women apply to jobs when they meet 100% of the job requirements, and men apply when they meet 60. It's really the statistics are staggering, but you know, we have to just keep in the back of our heads that regardless of, you know, who we are, where we are in our career, how many trainings and, you know, just how much work we all do, we still have unconscious biases that play into our work, especially if we are people hiring other people. It doesn't mean you're not doing a great job when you look to someone whose job it is to bring in the most diverse slate of talent. And no machine is going to do that for us, at least not today.
It's true. Great. All right, so I think I've got one more question here, and Ralph, I think it is for Joe, but I will, does it make sense to approach municipalities as well as the private sector, considering there's such a high vacancy rate in New York City, for example? I'm assuming, Ralph, this was for the open hire concept?
It's actually for both, to be honest. Joe, you know, could you speak to that for a moment? Have you had any contact within the administration or with the city in the past about this?
No, we talk to all levels of government, and this is part of stakeholder capitalism, right? So the government is clearly one of our key stakeholders, and I'll say particularly our local government. Mayor Spano of Yonkers has been very supportive of us, and we actually have expanded a transitional employment program through our foundation that the city funds. Once it began to focus on just the veterans, then it moved to the formerly incarcerated. Now it's anybody with barriers. We started with the business district downtown. We call it the Rangers program, by the way. They beautify the streets. Started with the downtown business district, expanded it to some of our parks. So look, they have the bully pulpit. Clearly, there are dollars that get allocated for workforce development through WIOA, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. So we clearly have to be in contact with our elected officials on both sides of the aisle to talk about this, because there's a bully pulpit there and there's funding there that could support some of the efforts, particularly on our foundation side. So absolutely. And they all want to see their constituents working. So I think that's a key piece of that. So they have to be at the table. You can't exclude the government at any level.
Sure, I would think so. And Lauren, do you folks address them directly as well?
Yeah, so I mean, we don't technically right now, and I was actually trying to like search very quickly, work with any municipalities or government agencies at that level. We do work with the NGA, which is a lot higher. And as to your point, it's definitely not easy, but they're a great case study for just a completely different way of us working, because it does require, at least for them, you know, a certain amount of security clearance. And it's a very different process than what we've been used to. But, you know, we're really open. The process of hiring diverse talent doesn't change, regardless of your sector or industry. What matters is making sure that from the bottom of your job description and what you're looking for resonates through the entire process. And then when they come into your organization, that they stay there. So that's really, you know, again, talking about the 360-degree diversity recruiting solution, like that's what we're working with companies with, because a lot of times they're just so far off from the requirements that they think they need on positions that they don't really need, that are just nice to have, but they're listing as requirements, up to, you know, the benefits that they're providing these people. And so the list goes on. We also work with a church. So,
Sure.
you know, we name the gamut, and we'll, you know, work with you and find a solution that helps your people feel a sense of belonging in your organization.
Well, that's terrific. It's been very inspiring. Thank you both. We really appreciate hearing from you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. And, you know, when I look at this, I started the whole thing about with my father, that people matter, right? Treating people with dignity and respect, and not judging until you've walked a mile in their shoes. And when you give people an opportunity, they really do step up, and you're changing people's lives in the process. You're creating loyalty. I coach it all the time. Just once you have people in the organization, to understand what they're going through, how to keep them included, how do they make them feel belonging. We all crave it. This is what we love. And so thank you both for sharing your experiences, what you are doing, how you're focused on changing the world. You know, as you say, it's one person at a time, it's one role at a time. But this is what we all have to do, is come together and build a community that's committed to this, and we can change the world. So last question for both of you. If people want to know more about what you're working on, where can they find you?
Greyston.org.
Great.
Sign up for our newsletter as well.
Yeah, powertofly.com. And like I kind of alluded to at the beginning, you can sign up as a job seeker, be part of our community, or, you know, inquire about becoming one of our clients. And that's, you know, on the website as well. So I hope to interact with all of you again soon. Thanks for coming.
Fantastic.
Thanks for
you so
having
much.
us. Thank you. Enjoyed
Appreciate
this.
you all. Thank you. Have a
good
great one.
evening.